Forgive me, Internet. It has been 5 months since my last podcast. I'm really happy to be back. For those of you who are new here, I'm Liz and I like to knit. And for those of you who are returning, it is good to see you again. Sorry I've been gone for a while. I'm not going to go too much into it because if you are a returner, you know that this is my first house, which I moved into this spring. That's been taking up a lot of my time. There's a good chunk of time where I just wasn't knitting, and so I didn't have very much to show, but lately I've been back into it, been enjoying it again, had more time to actually make progress on some projects, and so I've got some stuff to talk about, which I'm really excited to get into. Make sure you're staying hydrated. I podcast from the middle of the United States, and it is still very much summery, maybe some early fall, but still too warm to not be hydrating aggressively here. So I've got a jar of Propel water. So let's get into it. I have several things that I've finished. All but one of them I have to show. And part of the reason that I need a podcast today is because 2 of these are gifts. So I need to get those to the recipients as soon as I can. I also apologize that I sound a little bit nasally. I, after 4.5 years, finally got COVID. So this is a week and a half out and I still sound like this. I don't know. I feel better, so that's good. Anyway, what I'm wearing today is my Telegram by Becky Sorensen, who is also known as Soprano Knits. And I've talked about this before on the podcast. I think I've worn it maybe a couple times. Either way, it's a good, nice little light cardigan. I knit this. I finished it in 2021. It's knit in West Yorkshire Spinner's signature 4-ply in the color Nutmeg. I fell in love with one of the projects on Ravelry that was in like a yellow color in the West Yorkshire Spinner's signature 4-ply. And then when I went to my local yarn store, they were out of that color, but they had enough of this. And so I had to get it. I realize I'm clashing with my couch just a smidgen, but we're getting ready for fall. Who doesn't love all the burnt orange colors you can get? We'll see. I knit this on a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needle, and it's basically just a nice raglan broken rib cardigan. It does have this, probably easier if I show it this way. It does have this cable that runs up the inside of the sleeves and down the side of the cardigan. And honestly, that's where it gets the name, because I think it's supposed to be like SOS or OXO all the way down. This cable right here, this crossover, is a pain in the butt to do. And I think that if I make this again, I'll probably just leave it out. Like, it's a good cardigan, it's a good fit, but the extra detail there isn't doing too much for me. I use it as a good basic, so yeah. And it's held up well for having been kind of one of my go-to cardigans for a couple years now. So love it. It originally did have buttons. They fell off in the wash because I picked too heavy of a button. They were metal. I have some little wooden ones that are like, they're actually wood. They're treated, so they're not going to be an issue if I wash it. And then they have like a gold rim around the outside, and they're much lighter weight, and I think they'd go well with this. But honestly, it's the size 2, and I'm not a size 2 anymore, so I wear it open anyway. So it doesn't really need the buttons. Maybe at some point if my body shape changes significantly, or if I'm going to think about re-gifting, like giving this to somebody else that is smaller than me, I'll put the buttons back on, but for right now, it doesn't really need it. But yeah, it's also a little too warm to be wearing knitwear today, but I couldn't not. We're podcasting. All right, let's get into some finished objects. All right, so I'm going to roughly talk about these in the order they were finished, which means we are starting with the one that I don't have to show you. I don't even have full pictures because I had to get a new phone and I lost the finished object photos that I took before I gave these away as a gift. So my apologies. I do have the yarn, and I have a vacation photo that I'll show later. That's a half-finished version of the sock that kind of illustrates some of the modifications I made to the pattern. But Finished object I do not have. These were a pair of socks. I've made this pattern before. It's a free pattern. It's called Decathlon by Sue Grandfield, and I love it. It's a broken rib sock. It is good for if you don't totally know all the ins and outs, you can't try a sock on somebody and you're giving them to somebody. Always a good idea to use a ribbed or a broken rib, because then it kind of just hugs in on all the places that someone needs on their foot. I also like knitting these for me. The pair that I have are my socks, and there's nothing special about the yarn for those, so I know it's the sock pattern that's doing the Lord's work there. But yeah, the Decathlon sock, and then the yarn that I knit it in, this is my leftovers here. This is a base that I'd worked with before. It's the Kim Dyes Yarn Sourdough sock, and this colorway is called Pink Hibiscus, and I really like it. The reason that I knit these is I had a friend who watched my cats when we were out of the country at the beginning of the year, and I was like, how can I compensate you? And she said, oh, I'd like a pair of knit socks. I was like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. And she has a very admirable sweater wardrobe with a lot of fun patterns and colors. And so I was like, well, if I'm making socks, they have to stand up to the sweater wardrobe. So I walked into my local yarn store and I said, I need the brightest superwash pink yarn you have for socks. And this is what we found. You can't really tell. It has some very, very light, not variegation, like a tonal quality to it. And so it wasn't so much that it really distracted from the textured stitch, but it was just enough to give it a little bit of interest, and I'm not going to be worried about little bits of wear and tear, because that kind of helps to disguise it when it has that tonal quality. I did knit these on a US 2.5 millimeter needle. They're top-down socks, which is my preferred method for knitting socks, but I think you could very easily modify this pattern to be a toe-up pattern. I did make one unintentional modification because you know how you've knit a pattern before and you reference the stitch count and you're just like, yeah, okay, I can just start knitting this textured stitch as soon as I finish the rib and I'll remember exactly what it looks like. I did not do that. And then once I realized it, I was too lazy to go back. And also I kind of liked how it looked. So this is a broken rib, a 2x2 broken rib is the main body for this sock. And usually that would be 1 round of stockinette and 1 round of 2x2 rib. And my brain went, well, it's a 2x2 broken rib, so that means 2 rounds of stockinette and 2 rounds of 2x2 rib, which turned out fine, honestly. I'm going to show the picture of what the sock looks like right now, because I think that honestly the mistake that I made kind of turned it into more of like, it looks like a raspberry. It looks like a cluster fruit because it has all those little outpouchings. So I'm calling these my raspberry socks, and I would absolutely recommend making these. I have no qualms about them, and I think that the recipient really liked them as well. I don't know how well this yarn wears, so I can't really recommend it for that capacity. I have only used this yarn in a sweater before. If you've seen some of my previous videos, my Elton sweater by Hohi Locatelli is knit with 1 stripe of this in a different colorway and 1 stripe of a mohair, and I treat that pretty delicately. Definitely not ever going to get as much wear on that sweater as I would on a pair of socks. So I will try to ask her for feedback, but I am going to keep the remainder of this in case she wears holes in them or has something where she needs to give them back for mending. So as fun as this is, it's not going to end up as like a pop of color in another project. This is just getting stashed indefinitely. All right. The next thing I finished is another gift, and I really need to give this one away. This is a baby blanket, and it is for a friend who, as always, I was racing to finish this while she was, about to have the baby. So I did not win this competition. He was born about a week before I finished this, and it's been, How long has it been? Oh, it's been about a month since then, so I really do need to give this to them. But this is the Tumbling Blocks blanket by Purl Soho. And I absolutely love this pattern. This might be my new favorite baby blanket pattern. This is the first time I'd knit it. I didn't know this pattern existed until earlier this year, but according to the Ravelry page, it was actually released in August of 2023. So it is fully reversible. It has these 3 slipped stitches at the beginning of every round, so you have this nice edge on just the long side. It comes in 2 different sizes. It comes in a crib throw and a baby blanket size, and I'm absolutely enamored with it. It took me a month and a half to make, and I should say it's a free Purl Soho pattern. The actual pattern author is Hiromi Glover, and I knit this in the Knitpicks Mighty Stitch in the color Palomino. I was going for like a mustard, and I'm a little bit worried because it's coming up pretty true to what it looks like in the camera, and it feels a little bit sad beige children. So I don't know. I think it'll complement their nursery well because they have kind of a sage green nursery. But I really like this stitch pattern. You've got, I think if I were a quilter, I think this is a fairly common like quilting motif. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't sew very much. It reminds me of department store floors because like when my mother and I went to like Dillard's or Macy's as a kid, our local mall had this in like a wood grain as the flooring, and so it's nostalgic for me in that way. But you've got a panel of stockinette, reverse stockinette, and then a panel of garter stitch, and that kind of makes this repeating block pattern, and it's delightful. I ended up making in between the 2 sizes that are listed in the pattern. It's charted and written out. So for a free pattern, that's amazing. I used the charts, so I don't know how accurate the written out stuff is, but Purl Soho patterns are always just, so I'm sure that that's fine too. But it is a really decent size, I think, for a baby blanket. I can kind of wrap it around myself too. The difference between the 2 sizes are you do 3 pattern repeats of the textured stitch pattern or 5 pattern repeats of the textured stitch pattern. And I ended up doing 4 because 1, I was running out of yarn. I bought the yardage that was asked for the longer version, the 5 repeat version, the crib throw version. And then I got to the point where I was at the end of the 4th repeat. I had about half a ball left, and I didn't think I was going to get through the rest. And then I realized I really liked the length of it as it was, so I just kept it how it was. And I will definitely be doing that again. I did not check gauge. The yardage is probably correct. I just didn't check gauge, and I also realized that I didn't use the recommended needle. I didn't swatch. I don't know why I didn't use the recommended needle, but this calls for US 6 and I used a US 7, which I think is a 4.5 millimeter. Yes. But yeah, this is a 10 out of 10 pattern. This is probably my new go-to baby blanket pattern, and I'm really excited to gift it to the recipients. So I went back and I realized I didn't actually talk about the yarn for this, and you can see I still need to, I've washed it. I don't trim the ends like super short until after I've washed it. I need to go back and trim. But I haven't used Mighty Stitch before. It's an 80% wool, or 80% acrylic, 20% wool worsted base. And it feels good in the blanket. It feels good in the blanket, but it wasn't my favorite to work with. I like to knit very tightly. And so I did find that this yarn was slippery enough that I had some trouble figuring out how to tension it. It was kind of a situation where if I wrapped it around one finger, it wasn't quite enough traction, but if I wrapped it around 2, it was too much. And so I just kind of felt like I was pinching with my thumb a lot of the time. That is something like I could just be comfortable knitting loose, or I could have just gone down a needle size or something and called it good. But Not the most pleasant to work with for my specific style of knitting, but it feels really good in the actual thing. So love that. If I were going to make the same pattern again, I'd probably go with something that had a little bit more grip, just for the comfort, for the amount of knitting that you're doing. I've also used the Knitpicks Heatherly for baby blankets in the past, and that was a lot more comfortable to work with. It didn't have quite the same slip factor, and I think it's also 80% acrylic, 20% wool, which is still machine washable. It's still very easy care for a new parent. Babies make all sorts of terrible liquids and they get on everything, so I don't want to make a new mom ever have to do too much work to get those things out. But yeah, it's all right. It blocked out very comfortably. Like, it definitely changed a little bit in the wash in a good way, which is something that I worry about with acrylic a lot of the time. So that 20% wool is still doing its job there with the blockability, but I think that I would probably go with Heatherly unless I was looking for a specific color, because their color choice is pretty limited, or some other brand. I just tend to buy a lot of my yarn online. Alrighty, that's all. All right, the next thing I have, and I'm kind of going a little bit out of order because I technically finished these after the project I'm going to show you in a sec. But these are another pair of the Hermione's Everyday Socks by Erica Lueder. I'm never sure if I'm saying that right, but another fantastic free sock pattern. It's got this textured stitch pattern, and if you haven't knit these, I don't think it's a free pattern, so I'm not giving anything away, but you are knitting every other row, and then on the alternate rows, you're purling either the second stitch or the fourth stitch on repeat. So you kind of get this nice, it's not a broken rib, but it's kind of like a broken rib. It doesn't hug in at all. It feels more like a stockinette sock as far as its shaping, but it's just a really nice basic pattern. I knit these because my grandmother, who's the only person in my family who's ever knit anything other than me, I had made her a couple years ago some socks for Christmas, because I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but I bought her a kit as soon as I realized, like, oh, you used to know how to knit socks. I can bond with you over this. So I bought her for Christmas a Learn How to Knit Socks kit, and she very graciously accepted it. And then a month later, she gave it back to my dad and said, hey, could you just ask Elizabeth to make these for me? And so I did. So she got 2 pairs of socks that year. And then last Christmas, she gave one of the pairs back to me, and it had just gigantic holes worn in it because she wears them every night to bed. And so she's putting some wear in it. And so I mended those and gave those back to her. And I said, okay, I'm making you another pair. Which one of these fits better? Because I had made her a pair of the Hermione's Everyday Sock, and then I'd also made her, I think they're called loopy socks. It's another free pattern, but it's got a like a cable pattern to it. And she said that these fit better. So I was like, I'm just going to make the exact same thing. So I cast on. My grandma has small feet. I wear a size 7.5. She wears a size 6. And so kind of judging from that, I had this Grizzly Heather colorway in Knitpicks Stroll. And I went, I probably have enough even for a pair for me. I know I didn't have a full 100 grams of it, as I had like a ball and a half. But I thought with my grandma's smaller feet, it wouldn't be a problem, and I would definitely be able to get a pair of socks out of it. And if I had knit shorties, I would have been able to get a pair of socks out of it, but I didn't. And I didn't even, you can't even call it yarn chicken. I lost so badly. Look at that. So yeah, she'll be getting another nicer pair to replace the other pair of socks that she hasn't given me to mend, because I'm sure those are in bad shape too. But just to get her a fresh pair of hand knit socks, I knew that if I ordered another ball of this Grizzly Heather, it wouldn't be the same colorway, or it wouldn't be the same dye lot anyway, because I had this for years. And so I went with another Knitpicks Stroll. This is the pumpkin color. And I figured these are nice for fall. Her birthday's in October, so I'll probably just give these with her birthday gift. Some good fall energy. And she'll always know which one is the right and the left. So, but yeah. just a very silly pair of socks that do not match, but you know, they're sisters, not twins, so hopefully she likes them. And then my last finished object is one that has been shown on this podcast so many times. I'm so happy to have it done. I started it last November. It's the Birch Pullover by Andrea Mowry. And I am so happy with it. Okay, I'm going to put it on real quick. Because how could I not? But it's too hot to keep it on. So it won't stay for very long. But this way I can kind of show you what it looks like. It is the size 2. It is an all over half fisherman's rib, half brioche, just fisherman's rib sweater. And it's so lovely. Ooh, I'm going to put my hair up too so you can see the neckline. This took me almost a year to knit. For good reason. So it is, like I said, all over half brioche or all over fisherman's rib. And that means that for basically every round of distance that you would normally get, you have to knit 2 rounds. This one in particular, you knit a purl round and then you do a purl one, knit one into the stitch below. So you're either purling or you're basically doing ribbing. So this sweater took a long time. It's also in light fingering yarn. So I'm very happy with the outcome. I will definitely knit another one at some point if I have time. And I will be making time because it's so nice. It's so lightweight. Oh, I'm so happy. Okay, I'm going to stand up real quick. So I knit this as a size 2 and I made 3 modifications. 2 are intentional, 1 is unintentional. Basically, this is a paid pattern, but I don't feel like I'm giving away anything that you can't figure out just from looking at photos of it online. The first modification I made was adding this contrast color cast on, cast off. And that is something that I'd seen on some sweaters, and I just thought it would go really well with the sweater pattern, and I knew I wanted to make this sweater. I originally bought these yarns to go for a color work pattern. I don't remember what it was. Either way, I started knitting that. I realized I really didn't like it, and then I needed to use this yarn for something. I had a whole cone of this colorway, and then I had 100 grams of this colorway. So I have a significant amount left to work with, which I'm very excited about. This is Holst Supersoft. So it's 100% wool, light fingering weight. You can get it on a cone, which I can get it at my local yarn store. I'm so lucky. Comes in a ton of colors. This deep kind of purpley color is called Jasper, and then the contrast color is called Iced. And I love them both. I would knit a whole sweater in this. I would be much more likely to stain it. This, I might even be able to spill a cup of coffee on this and wouldn't know. I mean, I'd know, but I wouldn't be distraught. But I knit this using US size 3 needles, or 3.25 millimeter. And I'm very happy to have those back. One thing about fisherman's rib and regular rib is when you're transitioning between them, you don't need to go up a needle size for the body, just like you would for like a stockinette sweater with ribbing. So this is all one needle. It was very easy. I love that aspect of it. And if I can work up the nerve to knit another half brioche sweater, that's definitely a perk. As someone who's cheap and doesn't like to have a bunch of different sets of needles, not disappointed by that. So the first thing was adding those pops of contrast. This is a top-down sweater, so this is just picked up a tubular cast on. I could have used a smaller needle probably just for that tubular cast on, but I didn't. I'm not too upset with it. I don't think it flares too badly, and if I kind of have it pulled how I want it to fall, it lays perfectly flat. But if I was going to change anything, could have gone down needle size on that cast on. And then you can see that I did the bind off transition to the contrast color differently for the body and the sleeve. And I will tell you what I did, because I have strong opinions on now what is the correct way to do it for me. The thing I was going for was not like a color blocking. I just wanted a clean contrast pop of color from one to the other. So I didn't want it to be too bulky. I didn't want too much of the contrast color. And then I also wanted to make sure that it wasn't murky at all. It didn't like have a lot of messy bits to it. What I had read for people who have done this sort of modification is that you do your ribbing in your main color, and then you switch to your contrast color just for the setup rows, and then you do your tubular bind off in the contrast color. And so that's what I did for the body. And it just doesn't look as clean as I want it to. The transition is a little bit more messy. If these weren't such high contrast colors, I don't think I would be bothered by it that much. But what I ended up doing for the sleeves, because I knew I was going to be looking at them constantly and they were going to be in my face, very close detail, I decided to try something different. So I'm just going to hold this up. I don't think that it's too noticeable, but what I've seen people talk about for people who do like a lot of color changing socks or things like that, especially in the rib, they will interrupt their rib pattern in order to do a more clean color transition. So when you have reverse stockinette or garter or anything other than like a plain stockinette front, basically, when you change colors, you're not going to have a clean transition between the two. What you're going to have is your first color, the purl bumps of the bottom color, the purl bumps of the top color, and then the bottom color. And that's fine. And it's really great for doing like a gradient or a transition that you want to be more easy going. But for this, that's not what I wanted. And sometimes you'll see people, when they change color in like the ribbing of a sock, they will, as soon as that color changes, knit stockinette one full round. And then when they're going back to where they're knitting into the same color, they'll reintroduce their rib. I have never bothered with that for socks or for anything else, honestly, because I'm not usually changing color during ribbing for anything other than socks. And I don't care when it's that far away from my face. I'm not doing one of these and scrutinizing the ribbing of my sock, and no one else is going to either. And I'm one of those people where, if you know, you know, I don't have a problem wearing socks because I have a system. I care so much more about the texture of my sock, and if it feels weird, it is going to drive me absolutely nuts. So I don't bother interrupting a pattern that's already going just for the sake of aesthetics. But here, I thought that'd be a really useful principle. So I knit as much as I wanted for my rib, for my cuff, and then I did one full round of stockinette, and then I did my 2 setup rows. I like 2/4, personal preference, and then I bound off. And I'm quite happy with it. When I just finished it, before I had blocked it, I immediately was like, oh, no, I have to tear this back out. And I'm very glad that I blocked it first, because it gave very much the effect of like a nice tight cuff and then an edge of like piping on the outside. Like it didn't look like a smooth texture transition, and that bothered me a lot. But after it was blocked, it looks like it flows just right into the cuff. It's no big deal at all. So block it first if you're going to try this. I highly recommend that. Yeah. The third modification that I made, the unintentional one, I did one extra decrease round on the sleeves. I'm not going to say specific numbers, but basically you are decreasing, you're knitting it top down, and you're decreasing 2 stitches for every decrease round. Pretty standard sleeve construction. And I, for some reason, didn't want to count the first decrease round in the total number of decrease rounds. It's very unambiguous written in the pattern, my brain just short-circuited and I counted, oh, I need to do one more than what Andrea said to do. So that was not a problem because I had also modified this neckline and cuffs to be a 1x1 rib instead of a 2x2 rib. Had I left it as a 2x2 rib, I would have had to do something to fix that. Because since I was decreasing 2 extra stitches, I would no longer have had a multiple of 4. But since I only needed a multiple of 2 with a 1x1 rib, it didn't matter. Why did I decide to change it from a 2x2 rib to a 1x1 rib? I just thought it would flow over more nicely from the 1x1 half brioche to the 1x1 like normal rib. I love all of the pattern photos as well, so if I make this again, I'll probably just do the 2x2. But I thought it'd be fun, and I thought I would like it that way, and I do. All right, I think that is everything that I have to say about this sweater. And so I'm going to take it off because it's a warm one, and I don't need a wool sweater, but I am very excited to have this one. I think it'll make a very good addition to my wardrobe. So let's talk about what I'm working on now. Hydration break. So I have 2 active whips that I'm going to talk about today. One is the correct version of the Decathlon socks. These are, I think, going to be for me. These are also a Knitpicks Stroll, just the tweedy version. And this is what that texture stitch pattern is supposed to look like, the 2x2 broken rib. And there's really not much else to say about those, honestly. This is all I've got. Haven't even gotten to the heel yet. I like having a project that I can take easily on the go. I'm going to be visiting my sister to go wedding dress shopping and run a half marathon at the end of the month. So I'm kind of saving these more or less for that. I did kind of work on them in the car a little bit last week, but not too much else happening with these until that trip. The more exciting thing, the thing that I finally cast on, is I have had all of this Knitpicks Wool of the Andes sport yarn for over a year now. And I'm very excited about it. It's Camel Heather. It was on a great deal. I have another sweater in this yarn and it's worn great and it's really comfortable and I like it a lot. And so I knew I wanted to make something that could be a very high wear sweater. And I finally cast one on. There's not too much to look at yet, but this is going to be the Maple Flower by Audrey Borrego. I think I'm saying that right. This is the first cabled sweater I've ever knit that was in the round and not pieced. And I don't know how I feel about that, honestly. So far, there's really not too much of a difference, but we'll just have to see. I'm really enjoying the process. I haven't knit cables in a while. I'm out of the habit of cabling without a cable needle. So right now I'm just using like a yarn needle instead of a cable needle because use what you got. Alton Brown would approve. Yeah, the recommended needles for this are a size 3 US 3 or 3.25 for the ribbing and a size 5 or 3.75 millimeter for the body, and that is what I'm using. I had to wait until I finished my Birch to get those 3.25 needles back so that I could do the ribbing. So that's what kind of held me off from casting this on sooner. That's how I keep from having too many whips at a time, is like I just don't, if I need the needles for something, I can't I can't move on to the next project until I finish the first. And I hold to that rule. I know some people will leave things on like the barber's cords or things like that. I can't be doing that. I'll never finish anything. I have to keep it on the actual needles. I'm knitting the size 3. It just happened that the recommendation for this sweater is 11 inches of positive ease, and The size 3 is a little bit shy of that for me, but I don't necessarily need 11 inches of positive ease. Even in a drop shoulder, I have pretty narrow shoulders for my everything else. And then I also had just the right amount of yardage to comfortably make the size 3. So I took that as a sign that was where we were going with this. This does go up to a 72-inch bust in the pattern. So that's a 61-inch bust with the recommended ease, which is great. Like, honestly, good work, Audrey. The suggested yarn is classified as a fingering weight, but Ravelry has this listed as a sport weight pattern. I'm using sport weight yarn for it, and it is working out fine so far, but that was kind of interesting to me. A little bit weird. Yeah, I hope to have this done by the end of the winter. Hopefully I'll get some use of it January, February, when I really want a big cabled sweater. This won't hopefully take as long as like an all-over cabled sweater, because if I show you the pattern photos, it's really just the front of the body that's cabled. The arms and the back are stockinette, so should be much faster with all the same impression of a cable sweater. But I'm really excited about it. So far, there is a cable needle required every other round, which I'm a little bit annoyed by. But it's not like I'm having to reference the pattern the whole time. Like the charts are really, really clear. And the central chart I am having to reference every time, but there's 2 charts on either side of like a central cable pattern. And those, honestly, you can read pretty easily and know which round you're on. Having not knit a in the round cable pattern before, I was a little bit worried that I would have trouble keeping track of where I was in the chart, because I don't have like, I'm not doing a right side and a wrong side and a right side and a wrong side. But one thing that's really cool is she does have these little tiny, it's just a knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one stack. And so those are throughout those 2 side charts. And so you can always keep track of kind of which one you're on if you're just reading your knitting and you go, okay, I'm on an even row because I'm purling that stitch. I'm on an odd row because I'm knitting that stitch, or vice versa. So that hasn't been as bad as I thought. I'm really excited to have this sweater. Hopefully I don't give myself a knitting injury. I feel like I always end up with like some sort of stress injury in my thumbs around like late September because I get too excited about winter knitting. Does it happen to anybody else? A few years ago I thought it was related to Pokemon Go, but I've since come to realize no, it is just knitting related. So everyone be careful, make sure you're stretching, take breaks, ice your hands if you need to. We're just getting into the season if you're in, the Northern Hemisphere, so take it easy. You want to be able to knit all winter long. Alrighty, let's talk about some future knits and some yarn acquisitions. If that's not something you're interested in, thank you for stopping by. And if that is something you're interested in, which that's me, let's get to talking about it. All right, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things planned. And I have yarn, or at least some of the yarn, for 4 of those things. Many of these are gifts. So they do have time limits. And I'm going to try to plan better with my my filming schedule so that I can actually show you all of these things in their finished condition. But I'm very excited about all of them. I have 2 friends that moved to Milwaukee this year from Kansas City. And so they're moving north and it's going to be a little bit colder, and I love both of them very much. And I thought, sure, why not? This is the year to knit them both something for the holidays / to stay warm over the winter in Milwaukee. One of them requested a sweater and one of them requested mittens. And I love thrummed mittens. I have 1 pair. And immediately when she said mittens, I was like, do you know what thrummed mittens are? These are the ones you want. So she very kindly went along with my enthusiasm. We picked out some colors inspired by a pair of hiking socks that she has. She has a great eye for color, and so I knew that whatever she picked was going to be good. So I'm so excited for these. So the mittens are going to be I've made the pattern before, Easy Mittens with Thrums by Debbie Wilbur. And it calls for like one solid yarn and one thrum color. But what we're going to do is I'm going to do like the cuff and the thumb and the tip of the mitten in one of these two colors and the body of the mitten in the other. And then the thrums are going to be in this blue color. So very excited for that. Hopefully that will go faster. I always find that making thrums, if you've done that before, it's not hard, but it's so tedious. And I feel like it takes so much more time than just the actual knitting of the project. So that'll be a fun TV project going forward, but very excited for those. Second project gift for my other friend is going to be the No Frills cardigan by Petite Knit, and I am waiting to buy yarn on this one. So I've bought the mohair strand. She wanted it white. I was like, are you sure? Are you going to be able to take care of a white sweater? Please don't ruin this. I trust you. I love you. Don't disappoint me or you're not getting something knit again. And she can take that. And she said, yes, I promise I'll do a good job. I won't get stains on it. And if I do, I will ask you for advice on how to clean it so that I don't ruin it. And I said, okay, you can have a white sweater. So she picked out the pattern. We picked out the yarn together. The color of the main strand that I want has been out of stock for a while. It should restock on the 20th, and then I can make that purchase. So that will be another project. I don't know if I'm going to get that one done this year. It is a very long cardigan, and she wants the full length, so we'll see how it goes. She's already told me it's fine if I don't finish it this year, but kind of the point is congratulations on moving. Let's keep you warm in your new cold environment. I'd like to get it done this winter. So high hopes. The next project that I have is for the same baby that is going to receive this blanket, but it is going to be the Seaside set by Petite Knit, which I got these two colors of fingering weight cotton yarn. This is Comfy from Knitpicks, and well, I don't have the names of the colors. The white color is B983 and the green color is T383. And basically it's a little striped top and pants that are solid. For their baby shower, they did something very smart, which I ruined, because the second I heard that she was pregnant and had a registry, I was like, okay, I'm buying things now. And so I bought them and shipped them to her house, because I didn't think like, oh, wait for the shower and then she can open them when you're with her. Nope, absolutely didn't. And then when I got the shower invitation, they did something very smart, which is they listed like, hey, buy something for this size of child. And I had bought like some of the 6-month stuff off of her registry and some books and some bibs. And my card said 18 months. And so I'm making this in the 18-month size, which means I have a little bit of time. You do need to kind of get that done earlier than when the child is 18 months, though, because kids tend to be able to wear clothes early. Like, you can wear it and it be a little bit too big, whereas you can't wear it when it's a little bit too small, you know, as a baby. So for those of you with newborns, make sure to try on their new clothes ahead of schedule, because they'll probably fit it now. And my friend's son is on the higher end of the growth chart, so I'd love to get this to them by a year, but not a huge rush on that. But I have bought yarn for it, so I had to share. I'm very excited. The next thing is one for me, and I don't know, this is probably going to be like a January, February project after I finish that other cabled project, because this is going to be the Wellerman by Caitlin Hunter. And I fell in love with the large gray sample that she has. And so I bought some Simply Wool worsted weight yarn in the color Winnie. And this is, it's beautiful. It's going to be just a nice, dreamy, kind of romantic cabled shawl. And I plan to keep it in my office because it is so cold. The air conditioning does not chill. That's the wrong word to use in that scenario. The air conditioning does not relax over the winter, so you need to have something kind of to bundle up with. I'm in an office of all women, so at least we can kind of like hopefully be on the same vibe of how cold it is and how much we want to adjust the thermostat. The problem is that it's an old academic building, so the thermostat doesn't work very well. So, layers, and especially nice warm wool layers. So that's what that will be. And then the last project I don't have yarn for, but I can show a picture of what I'm going to buy. I'm just waiting for that other yarn to be back in stock so I can order them in one shipment. But this January will be mine and my husband's 7-year anniversary of marriage. It's the wool anniversary, y'all, so he's got to get a sweater this year. I knit him a sweater last year, and it's 100% wool, and it's ribbed and it's thick, and he kind of very lovingly, because he wears it all the time, but he very kindly said, maybe something a little bit less warm would be a good addition to my wardrobe. And so I've been wanting to try the wool and cotton yarn from Knitpicks. This is a very Knitpicks episode. I promise I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I'm just cheap and I live in the United States, and so a lot of my yarn has come from there over the years. But the wool and cotton DK weight yarn is what I'm going to be buying for him for the sweater. I haven't picked out a pattern yet. I might just make it plain stockinette raglan. Wouldn't be anything too important to use a pattern for, so we shall see. But I'm very excited, and he's very knit-worthy, especially because I know that he will let me wash it, so he can't ruin it. But that's everything. That's all I got today. The house is going well. I might do a house tour at some point. I've repainted half the rooms in this place now, once, more than once for at least one of them. But we're getting there. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you've had a good 5-month break and have gotten to enjoy the summer, or if it's winter where you are, have had plenty of knitting to make up for my lack of knitting. But thanks for coming by, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you hopefully in another month. I plan to just kind of do these when I have enough knitting to justify talking for an hour at the computer screen. But I really missed this, and so I'm glad to be back at it. But yeah, take care and happy knitting.